as I walked up, I had two thoughts. The first one was, don't trip and fall on those stairs. And the second was, my picture is not as pretty as Ingeborg's, so maybe I need to do something about that going forward. I'm really honored to be invited to the peers group to be a member, but not only a member, also to present. But it brings a lot of pressure because if I don't do well, I might lose my membership and never be invited back to speak. So I was invited to speak on our custom base, Atlantis custom base. And this morning I was listening to Gary Jones saying, if you can outsmart them, outdress them. And after the first 5, 6 presentations, I realized I was way underdressed. Kudos to all the speakers. It really is a great format. And I've already wasted a half a minute, so I'm going to go. And I'd like to put all of us in a box, if that's okay. Seeing that I have the microphone, I'm going to assume that it's okay. And call us tinkers. We like to tinker. As a dental technician, I like to roll a line angle another few times, even if it's been rolled. And a lot of my prosthodontists like to take an extra impression just to make sure we get that margin. And for those of you who've done presentations, you know that we're always tinkering. I was talking to Dr. Goldenberg yesterday, and he said, yeah, I'm always tinkering on my presentations. I tinker on the aeroplane on the way to the presentation, and that normally gets you in trouble. So last night I got on the airplane, got a non-alcoholic beverage, sat down, opened my Surface, and realized my presentation wasn't there. I took my stick, where I always save it on, stuck that in, and realized I took the wrong stick as I left the office. So I emailed my IT guy, and I said, I got on the internet and said, I don't have my presentation. Email it to me. Presentation's too big, couldn't email it, ran out of time, airplane took off. So at 30,000 feet, I paid $30 for dial-up internet, and he sent me this picture as his first picture to tell me that maybe I don't need, there we go, maybe I don't need a presentation. So I thought to myself, either Steve Jobs didn't know what he's talking about, or I should try to prove a point today. And as it's my first presentation, I decided I'm not going to prove a point, I'll use my PowerPoint. So I'm going to talk a little bit on the custom base and what it is. A custom base, or a titanium interface, or a tie base, as we've come to know, gives the technician and the restorative team the ability to restore whatever we want on the titanium, or on the implant, but still maintaining a proprietary interface. So it's not something we mill ourselves, it's something that Dentsply give us, and we can then restore on top of that. So in a lot of cases, when we look at these challenging cases we deal with, a tie base is not sufficient to support the structure. As you all know and you all agree, most of our industry is moving and has moved away from PFM restorations, where this would have been a pretty easy UCLA abutment casted and processed with PFM. We now do these with zirconia. So a big challenge I had was, how do I speak in front of such an esteemed group of clinicians on single posterior restorations? And I noticed on the evaluation form there's an area where you're supposed to evaluate me on content. And I thought I'm definitely going to fail if I only show posterior implant crowns. But it is a very, very valid way for us to restore. This is a case we did a couple of weeks ago, helped my clinician to take a trios digital impression. And if you think about digital impressions, the one thing digital impressions are doing easier than crown and bridge impressions is actually implant level impressions. We're getting to cases where we're doing full arch restorations, hybrids, by taking digital impressions. I'm busy with Dr. Goldenberg with a case where we're going to do a fixed hybrid, and we're busy doing a conus case. Now, when we take implant level impressions, we always deal with the flare, and that makes the PVS impressions very tough to deal with. So digital impressions gives us a distinct advantage when we take those impressions. Once we have the digital data, we import this directly into our Atlantis design software. Once we have this, we have implant position, and from that point on, we have a proposed crown position, and we design everything with the end in mind. And I think a lot of the thread you've seen through these presentations has been, think what we want to end up with right from the start. So when we have an Atlantis custom base, it's basically, by definition, a 70% CAD abutment. So it's an under-designed CAD abutment, but an over-designed titanium base. So it gives us something that we can work around. When you look at a tie base, what really helps us to be more efficient is the fact that we have core files. So once we have our abutment design, we import that directly into our 3Shape design software, and now we can virtually, staying in the digital world, design our final crown before the abutment is actually milled. So by the time everything comes together, the model comes out of the model printer, Atlantis ships our custom base, and our crown is ready to go and to finalize. Now we have two options. We can do gold hue, which is what we prefer when we use our high translucency zirconias, and then we have the normal titanium, silver titanium. Now if you think, or if you've been wondering, is a core file an accurate way to restore? If you look at that picture, the abutment was milled in Boston, and the crown was milled in our facility at Absolute. That's the first time these two components mated with each other and no human hand ever touched them. So you can see the marginal integrity, even with a very tough interface like that, was 100% accurate. So our technology has come a long way to help us be more efficient and do these things a little bit more predictably. So our crown went in beautifully. We used high translucency zirconia. These custom bases also gives us the ability to choose between high strength zirconia or high translucent zirconia, depending on the application. Now what's important, what I've learned in the past, the first time I worked with Dr. Lyndon Cooper back in 2002, we still had the big Astra bi-abutments, and I milled this beautiful abutment, and he sent it back, and he said to me, "You never finished the abutment." And what I didn't realize was that the subgingival part of an abutment is probably more important than the coronal aspect. And what we're seeing today is a lot of these abutments being over-designed. So we pay a lot of attention on a negative curve subgingivally. So what we deal with, and I think the lab technicians in the audience will agree with this, I'm a little fast, is over-engineering. All this technology we have gives us the ability to do things that probably shouldn't be done. So I'm going to have Katie speak to us on. So I don't know who was in more trouble, Dad sitting and texting while Flutter by Fairy went right by him. And that is truly what we deal with. Technology is putting the ability in people's hands that are not always qualified to use them. So I thought, where do we see the advantage of what we're doing? And in a case like this, I don't have to point out to a crowd of your esteem, you can see that abutment is way over-designed. And that's one of the problems that CAD abutments has brought to us that we haven't seen in the past. When we worked at UCLA's, we normally undercontour it. And from this point on, I don't have to tell you what happened, but that implant was failed. We had to go back in and then temporize again. But it's a lost situation right from the start for these patients. So we pay a lot of attention, especially with the subgingival contour. And that's where the custom base helps us. Because it's an under-contoured abutment, we can get to height of contour without having to blanch so much subgingivally as we do with some of these custom abutments or these CAD abutments. So this is a case that came across my bench a couple of weeks ago. And I knew I only had one shot because I didn't want to present on just a posterior single crown. Mark Scurrier got this case. The patient lost all 4 of her incisors because of root resorption. And Dr. Deb Sacco placed 2 implants, 7 and 10. We went to an immediate temporization or a temporization to get our tissue contour right. And at this stage, we decided we would really like to have a screw retained. Now, if you do a screw retained with implants placed that deep on normal titanium interfaces, they're mostly too short to support your zirconia. So what we did is we designed this using Atlantis custom bases. Atlantis custom bases are not indicated by the company for bridge work, but they work great when you bend the rules just a little bit, and I show you. So the patient said she loved her original smile. The only problem she had was number 7 was set back a little bit, and she would like to bring that forward. She also said she would show a little bit, or would like to see a little bit more flare. So we didn't superimpose our study cast in this case. We used what the patient had from her pre-op. So all the design files you will see is based on the patient's pre-op with the thought that we were just going to push number 7 slightly facial. So there's our design file. And if you look at this, if I didn't tell you that this was an Atlantis custom-based case, you might have actually thought that this was just a normal CAD cementable case. But these abutments are slightly less or under-designed from what we see in CAD. So what we have now is 2 gold U abutments with a removable bridge that can slide over this. Now, nothing describes this better than screw-mentable. But it's a screw-mentable that's planned right from the start. And the fact that the abutments are slightly more under-designed gives us the ability to create a little bit better aesthetics, and we can control that. So from this point on, we designed everything monolithic on the lingual aspect, ceramic layer Emax porcelain on our zirconia frameworks, and we were ready to take this to the mouth. Now, this is where the true value came in of having this system. We were able to place the abutments individually. I made little positioning jigs just for the sake of it, but it was an EV system, so these abutments can only go in one way, and that really helps us to be a little bit more predictable. You can see the abutments in place. And from this point on, we could do our normal adjustments as we would chair side. So when we did UCLA type restorations, and this was one piece, you know how long it takes to screw everything down, unscrew everything, and take it back out of the mouth. This gives us the ability now to go in and out of the mouth as if it was a normal cementable protocol. We had great tissue contour. We looked at our interproximal contacts. Everything was good. And we soon realized that I overblanched the tissue part of our design. Patient said it was a little painful, and we went back, used some tissue pressure indicator, and we could see where the spots were. Now, this whole process took us about half an hour to get everything fine-tuned. If you have to screw it, unscrew it, and do that, this becomes an hour and a half, 2-hour process. So very predictable and helped us to be a little bit more efficient. All the adjustments are done outside the mouth, gives us the ability to control and make sure we don't overheat our zirconia. And then from that point on, we go back to the model and we do all the cementation externally. Because it's a bridge, we used it back on the model. We activate the surface, sandblast them, and cement it with a white cement, blocks out, and then we have the ability to do a lot of cement cleanup. So I think this system helps us. We hear so much about periimplantitis today, and I think it's not just caused by cement not being cleaned up, but also by overbulked subgingival abutments. Now you'll note on this bridge, when we work on these deep internally hexed implants, we get into undercuts very quickly. The Atlantis base abutments are not milled without hexes. So in this case, we cut the one hex out to make sure that we get good draw after we cemented the case. Now there was our pre-op, which was a very challenging pre-op, and our temporary phase, and that was our final phase with our crowns cemented. But if you x-ray the case, this is where you really see the value. You can see we have a nice small contour coming out into our full emergence before we get to height. So they asked me to do a secret of my success. I can honestly say surrounding myself with the right people, passionate people. Absolute Dental is a group of extremely passionate ceramists and technicians. And I don't think anybody can be successful all by themselves. But it's a little bit more personal for me. I'm a cancer survivor, 9 years to the month next month. Advanced stage 3, so I'm very blessed to stand here. A lot of people don't make it this far. So my motto personally is life is short, enjoy the ride. And being here today was a great honor. I appreciate the invitation, and thank you so much.